Hello and welcome back to Coin Lady channel. The news that Coinbase is suing the SEC only emerged a few days ago. And I'd like to offer some insight from a couple of solicitors who have been discussing this, including one who has discussed the potential impact of this on the SEC versus Ripple case. To that end, I've included some feedback from solicitors James Murphy at Medalorman on Twitter and John Deaton. However, before I go any further, I feel it necessary to state that I have no training in law or finance and am not providing legal or financial advice. You know that none of my advice should be used to make any financial transactions, right? As a pastime, I like discussing various aspects of cryptography in video form on YouTube. And for lark's sake. Contrarily, I'm very happy to see Coinbase. Frankly, I'm ecstatic to see any organization taking an offensive stance against the SEC, which has been devastating at the investors that it's whose mission is to protect. The SEC has treated investors in the world of cryptocurrency as if they were the enemy. The situation is so flipped that it's hard to believe it's real. I enjoy it when a company goes after them. When it comes to Coinbase specifically, I haven't exactly been overjoyed by their actions. Let's not forget that there are varying viewpoints on whether or not we should be offended by Coinbase, even if you don't know anything about cryptocurrency. I won't reiterate my stance on delisting XRP, which I've already expressed numerous times. But even if you discount that, the company is still being sued by XRP community member and attorney Fred Rispoli over the theft of Songbird tokens that they promised to distribute but have yet to distribute, and the delay in distributing Flare to XRP holders. So, we'll have to wait and see if things improve on that front. Consequently, I value that, too. As it is, Coinbase is not meeting my needs. The SEC needs to be reined in, but I must say I'm relieved to see this happening. And if Congress doesn't do anything, it might be years before anything happens. Okay, we'll resort to the courts. So, here's a headline from the world of cryptocurrencies. The XRP community rejoices as it receives substantial support against the SEC, and Coinbase users experience widespread elation. The SEC's the party bringing suit. The XRP community is celebrating the news that San Francisco-based exchange Coinbase is suing the Securities and Exchange Commission. Yesterday, Coinbase sued the Securities and Exchange Commission and the U.S. Circuit Court. The lawsuit comes after the largest cryptocurrency exchange asked the Securities and Exchange Commission to create and approve crypto industry regulations by filing a petition for rulemaking in July. The action is an attempt by a Coinbase to get the Securities and Exchange Commission to answer a series of questions with a simple yes or no. Paul Grewal, chief legal officer at Coinbase, announced the news. I'm going to tell you what he actually said. So once more, I'm Paul Grewal, Coinbase's chief legal officer. He stated, "Today we filed a narrow action in the U.S. Circuit Court to compel the SEC to respond yes or no to a rulemaking petition. We submitted our request for regulatory oversight of the cryptocurrency sector to them in July of last year. Because the SEC has failed to respond to our petition from last July, which they're legally obligated to do within a reasonable period, we have taken this matter to court today. The lack of consensus among our authorities on crypto is evident, as even the chair of the SEC has declined to specify which cryptocurrencies should be considered securities." And then I'll just mention that the Odd Whales Twitter account was retweeted by Paul Grewal. It was a video from last week, and I had just read that Gary Guns had refused to say whether ETH is or is not a security when he was being grilled by Representative McHenry, which is where I reported the story. That should be a simple question to answer if everything is as transparent as Gary Guns claims. Look, I understand there are over 20,000 different cryptocurrencies in existence. I don't think it's reasonable to expect even Kim Jong-unza, whom I despise, to know right off the top of his head that when you talk about all 20,000 cryptocurrencies, whether or not they are or are not securities. However, when discussing ETH, the facts and circumstances are already well known to him. We know this because he discussed it with us, and we have tapes of him discussing ETH from nearly 5 years ago. You're referring to the second largest digital currency by market capitalization. Clarity is required. Is that brilliant? He ought to know the answer is yes or no, right? To reiterate, the answer to your question about cryptogram 205,589 is yes. Is market capitalization considered a security? most likely has never even heard of it. If, however, you're discussing ETH, you have no such wiggle room. He has previously discussed a Bitcoin. And it was fun to see a newbie bring it up. I've mentioned this before on the channel, but it was funny to see this thrown in Gary's face when he said, "Well, I'm not going to speak about the specifics of any one crypto and things like what you did with Bitcoin," which I've mentioned numerous times. It was entertaining to watch, but he still won't answer questions regarding food. It's totally inappropriate. Paul Grill continued by saying that the crypto sector and its consumers need clear regulations and norms to follow that are constructed for a new technology, and that enforcement efforts based on inapplicable securities legislation are not the answer. Look, I'm not overly enthusiastic about Coinbase or Dubai right now, but I think we can all get behind this. Let me now offer the thoughts of attorney James Murphy, also known as Metal Lawman on Twitter. And his thoughts on the matter are as follows. Learn more about Coinbase's lawsuit against the SEC below. We may expect swift action. When compared to the Ripple case, this one stands out. It is the appeal court, not the trial court, that will hear the matter first. There won't be any document exchange or depositions taken as part of discovery. Just the hearing and a briefing. In the legal department, former Labor Secretary and son of the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, Eugene Scalia, is in charge. Scalia has extensive experience winning cases against government agencies like the SEC. The petition that was submitted the day before is quite convincing. To get the SEC to act on Coinbase's request for rulemaking, the company has filed a writ of mandamus with the court. The SEC has threatened to sue Coinbase, and this step may or may not influence the timetable of that lawsuit. I anticipate that numerous prominent entities will file amicus briefs in defense of Coinbase's. The House Financial Services Committee or individual representatives could submit amicus papers in favor of Coinbase as well. Any reaction to Coinbase must be approved by the SEC commissioners before it can be implemented. There is a slim possibility that the SEC will cave and start making rules. For Gary Ginter's plan of regulation by enforcement to fail, all it takes is for one of the 5 commissioners to abandon it. That's encouraging. That is a fact, without a doubt. I just don't think it's likely to occur. As sad as it may be for Nate, it appears that most of what is happening today boils down to simple partisan divisions. Although Coinbase's action does not immediately impact pending SEC proceedings against Ripple/XRP, Betrix, and others, as James Murphy pointed out, it does an excellent job of highlighting the SEC's conflicting statements regarding its ability to regulate digital assets. Juries everywhere will take note. We shall now observe its appearance. Yes, of course I get it. And I don't have to tell you how terrible the SEC is. I just don't think they can keep acting this way without eventually bringing down the entire asset class and all crypto assets. That doesn't seem likely to me at all. Since we aren't getting adequate, correct advice from Congress, which is really where this whole thing is supposed to start, it's going to be a mess for a number of years. It's clear that you can't keep stomping on this market segment forever. It's simply that I can't bring myself to believe that. Let's face it, we're fighting the good fight. We must maintain our patience. Here is what lawyer John Deaton said after hearing the news. Prior to recent days, the gentleman who filed the writ of mandamus against Coinbase today noted that it was the second such case concerning cryptocurrencies. Crypto's first writ of mandamus was filed by me when I sued the SEC, seeking a judge to compel the SEC to carry out its duties by amending the Ripple complaint to include only direct sales using Ripple. I contended that the SEC's legal team lacked the honesty necessary to demonstrate that XRP sold on the secondary market in a manner unrelated to Ripple constituted securities. In the 76 years since how he was decided, the SEC has failed to cite a single case that contradicts that ruling. Not because the SEC had a valid argument on secondary sales, but because of the inherent weakness of my writ of mandamus. However, a judge was going to inform me that the SEC is part of the executive branch and has wide latitude in how it decides to allege and file a case because of the separation of powers. I planned to argue that the SEC's judgment constituted an outrageous abuse of discretion and that misconduct was possible. For my part, too, I saw the writ of mandamus as having more of a strategic than a legal purpose. In doing so, I knew I was increasing the likelihood of a botched response from the SEC. With the aid of the writ, we were able to join the case as amicus and play a role in excluding an expert witness and over 3,500 affidavits. The Coinbase edict seems to be spot right. And I'm calling it, just like I did when I said grayscale will prevail in the fight for a Bitcoin spot ETF. I looked into mandamus fees over 2.5 years ago. Coinbase is in the clear legally. I predicted the cryptocurrency sector would prevail in court more than a year ago. The law is not on the side of the SEC. The evidence that has accumulated over the past 6 years puts the SEC in the losing position. You know, I really like your observation. It's enticing, to be sure. So that's why I was saying a couple of minutes ago that, even if we're not getting things handled the way that we would have liked, it would be best to start with Congress and make sure everyone knows who's in charge of what. Most of the time, I think the courts get it right when it comes to making decisions like that. A perfect justice system does not exist. But here in the States, you've got it made. I completely understand that occasionally horrible things happen when they shouldn't. The judges, however, are impartial examples of blink templates. Therefore, they will do whatever it is that judges do when presented with a crypto case. Well, that settles it. And it's crystal evident what it's like working with the SEC, given how consistently incorrect they are on a wide range of crypto statements. It's not surprising that they've been losing so badly in court, all the way to the Supreme Court. I remember seeing this discussed in a video not too long ago. I'd say it was within the previous 5 or 6. This individual is responsible for not only crypto but also 5 of the SEC's previous 6 judgments at the Supreme Court level. How, therefore, does one arrive at the position where they routinely lose before the Supreme Court? The arrogance of those who believe they can get away with anything, I think, is to blame. Then they join their own echo chamber of idiots, where they hear nothing but praise for themselves but still manage to fool themselves into thinking they are quite great. So, in the end, you can expect to face the facts. That's why they've been experiencing such a string of setbacks. In addition, you can examine the outcomes of lower-level cases like the Voyager Grayscale case. It's a really snug fit. So, you check out the SEC's procedures. They're doomed to failure. In the end, justice will be served. That's the most likely scenario, in my opinion. Unfortunately, we have little choice but to wait it out, as the very thing that is intended to safeguard us does us harm. However, just so you know, I'm not a financial advisor, so you shouldn't take my advice to make any investments or trades, right? Please hit that like button if you enjoyed it. And subscribe my channel. See you later, bye.